Okay, students, so we're at Unit 5, if you can believe it, and we are completing the first part of educational psychology because you'll be moving on to educational psychology 2 next. But okay, let's focus on where we are now. So Unit 5 is about the psychology of child development in respect of physical, cognitive, ethical, social, creative, and emotional development from birth to year 18. So we're not only going to be covering these domains, we are going to be covering others as well, but this is just a starting point. I mean, you can see how long that title is already. I couldn't add anything more. This video is going to outline some of the domains and some of the information that you can consider and think about. It's not going to cover everything because it is impossible. But I want to give you a snapshot view of what are some of the domains we look at and what it includes and how it affects you and your performance or your view and framework with which you look at a chart. Okay, so it's going to follow a little bit of some of the things that you've covered already, and then it's going to follow some things that you haven't. But we're going to talk through it, and I'm going to try and go through it as slowly as possible while also not boring you with too much detail, because it's a lot of these things that you can look up yourself. By now, I hope you have already covered all of the information that has been uploaded thus far, and that this video is just really going to cement the knowledge that you have on the topic, or that you've gathered on the topic until this point. So it's important for us to understand the domains of development for our children. Why? Once again, because it helps us to identify red flags, and the red flags are points that we can notice about a child that are not developing as you would typically expect for the age or for the developmental stage. And so if you do identify these red flags, some of which we'll discuss in this video, you will know when intervention needs to take place, and you'll also know what type of intervention needs to take place. So for example, if you notice that they are struggling to hold a pen or pencil, you'll understand that it's about their fine motor development, but we'll talk about this as the video progresses. Okay, so let's jump into it. Okay, so these are the various ways in which you can look at development and developmental domains. As you can see in the 5 pillars of psychology, the way it's presented here, it seems like these are the only domains. They are not. There are definitely domains that are called the main domains. I'll discuss that now. But there are various domains that we can consider. So you have the biological domain, you have the cognitive domain and what it includes, like thinking, intelligence, memory, and so on. You have developmental as per normal, which is the learning and lifespan, social and personality, mental and physical health. Then you also have child developmental domains like language. I know it's very small and difficult to see, but I needed to add it all on one page. You also have literacy, mathematics, and so on and so forth. Developmental domains, the fine motor, adaptive, social, cognitive, physical, social, sensory, cognitive communication, and the developmental domain of early childhood, and there it lays it out as well for you. But many people say that there are 3 domains, that there are 3 main domains of development, and it depends on, sorry about that, it depends on what you consider to be the important domains. And the 3 domains, they say that growth in one domain influences the other, and that is true to a big degree. If there is a challenge in one domain, it may and will affect another domain. So they say that the first domain is physical. So I don't agree that there are only 3 domains, but this I'm helping you to understand what the literature says and what information says. So they say the physical domain is the first one, and not necessarily in order, but it's one of them, and this includes things like body size. And you can see that children are developing differently depending on their body size. If they obviously, you get short people and tall people and so on, but you can see that there is a delay in development in some children if you notice their stature or the way their body looks. So things like body proportions, or is their head a lot bigger than their bodies or their torso and so on, the appearance, the brain development, motor development, perception capabilities, and physical health. These are all part of the physical domain. The cognitive domain includes things like thought processes and intellectual abilities, things like attention, memory, problem solving, imagination, creativity, academic and everyday knowledge, also things like metacognition and language. So these domains include other domains that you can see separated here, such as language. It's included in the cognitive domain from some perspectives. Then the next domain will be called social or emotional domain, and this is around things like self-knowledge, self-esteem, metacognition, sexual identity, ethnic identity, also things like model reasoning, understanding and expression of emotions, self-regulation, temperament, understanding others, interpersonal skills, and of course friendships, which is also very important. So these developmental domains differ from person to person, from child to child, and it is affected by the environment, things like genetics, and other influences as well. So it depends on what the child is being exposed to, what the child, where the child is coming from, and so on and so forth. Developmental domains are exceptionally important in that they help us to build ourselves as individuals. So as a child, if you have a challenge in the physical domain, which is, for example, you have a health issue, it does affect things like the way you build relationships, because you might be very self-aware of this health issue and you're concerned about how other people see it, and that affects your peer relationships. So can you see how one domain can affect and will affect another domain? So this is an important thing for us to remember as we progress. Okay, so remember what I said, I'm not going to go through everything, but I'm going to touch on various things that you have a good understanding, not only for this module, but for the one ahead, and of course for practical purposes, as in when you're in the classroom. So I'm going to look at attachment theory, which we may have spoken about before. Attachment theory was really the work of Bowlby, which is his theory of attachment. And attachment is about the child coming into a home or coming into a situation where they are able to bond with a caregiver, usually the mother or the predominant caregiver in the home. It doesn't only have to be the mother. The reason we're talking about attachment here is because attachment affects development as well, and affects the way the child sees the world for the rest of their life. I'm going to read some of this because I want to explain it as I go along. So the main features of Bowlby's theory of attachment speaks about the child having an innate or inherent or born with a need to form an attachment with one person. Can be more than one person, but specifically with a primary caregiver. This special attachment to one person is called monotrophy. This strong relationship with one person should continue unbroken for the first 2 years of a child's life if adverse effects are to be avoided. So if there is a challenge, if the relationship is not stable, if there's difficulties in the relationship, if there is no stable relationship, the child is most definitely going to be affected for the rest of their life. And this is what the theory says, and the way that they interact with the other people around them. A lot of research has been done in this area. I personally subscribe to attachment theory. I think that the first 2 years, I actually extend that for myself. I think the first 5 years, and if not more, are extremely important in a young child's life. But the first 2 years, yes, specifically, are very important in the child understanding the world and feeling safe within the world, and specifically with this important relationship with the primary caregiver. He says that the maternal deprivation hypothesis holds that a broken attachment or lack of attachment leads to problems for the child with relationships on reaching childhood. Broken attachments leads to delinquency and affectionless psychopathy. And they also say that many times children with attachment issues are the ones that will get involved in substance use and in other deviant behavior. And so that is one premise that holds around attachment. You, of course, need to do research and understand it for yourself to have an idea of what you believe or what you think, but a lot of research has shown this to be true. Attachment provides a safe haven for when the child is afraid, and a secure base from which to explore the world. So the child feels secure in the relationship with a primary caregiver. They are more confident in themselves, and they are more likely to explore the world because they feel safe in the knowledge that they come from a safe base. And then separation, distress, anxiety serves to draw the attachment figure back to the infant as a survival mechanism, and this is normal, and you'll see this with children when they become more aware of their world and their primary caregiver or mother or father, whatever the case is, moves away from them, that they cry and kind of reach for the person, because this is how they are testing to make sure that their world is safe and that the primary caregiver is going to come back. This is an excellent topic to research for self-interest, and it does explain a lot when you see children in your class, when you understand the attachment issues. Maybe they lost a parent quite early in life, or maybe it was a very disorganized life for them for the first couple of years, and then you'll see that they respond in different ways. So I'd suggest you do some more research in this area, watch some YouTube videos. There are great YouTube videos out there, but make sure that it's from a good source. Okay, so I'm going to look here at attachment types. And so a secure attachment, the caregiver's behaviors, the caregiver or the mother or whoever the primary caregiver is reacts quickly and positively to the child's needs, and they're very responsive to the child's needs. So that the child's crying, they'll go to the child. The child is hungry, they respond. Whatever the child needs, they're quick to respond. The child's behaviors, they are distressed when the caregiver leaves, and they're happy when the caregiver returns, and they seek comfort from the caregiver when they're scared or when they're sad. An insecure or avoidant attachment, the caregiver is unresponsive or uncaring and can be dismissive of the child, and the child behavior will then show this. They will have no distress when the caregiver leaves. This is not in all cases. Some kids are a bit more positive, so they're okay if mom or dad leaves them by granny or whatever the case is. But this is talking about a general kind of response, even if a child is left with a stranger. Also, the child does not acknowledge the return of the caregiver, does not seek or make contact with caregivers. Sometimes children on the autism spectrum, they also have challenges with responding to others and even to caregivers. So you do understand that it's by case and it depends on the situation. Then the insecure ambivalent attachment type, they respond to the child inconsistently. So the caregiver isn't consistent. For the child, they're distressed when the caregiver leaves, and they're not comforted by the return of the caregiver. So they feel quite distressed even in the caregiver returns, because it is not a consistent or secure attachment. So insecure or disorganized attachment, and so this is when the caregiver is abusive or neglectful and responds in frightening ways to the child, or frightened ways. The way the child reacts is no attaching behaviors and often appears dazed, confused, or apprehensive in the presence of the caregiver, because there is that fear in the child. It's very sad, but these do affect the way the child responds to the world. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this because I find it to be an interesting topic, and also because I find it to be an important topic. So how the attachment bond shapes adult relationships. Now this is quite important. So child attachment, if you have a secure attachment, you're unhappy when your mother leaves and you're happy when your mother comes back. So in adulthood, you're confident in relationships, you're secure in relationships, and you're willing to ask help from your partner. So think about what your attachment type is and what your response in relationships is. That's what I did and what I thought about. You don't have to, but it's just interesting to see whether these are true or not for yourself. Avoidant does not want a mother when she comes back, is distracted by the environment, and in adult relationships you prefer to be alone and does not open up emotionally to their partners. Ambivalent childhood attachment, very upset when mother leaves, does not interact with the environment a lot. So in adult attachments, you're preoccupied, always afraid to be rejected, and an obsessiveness to keep close. So sometimes it can come out as jealousy or afraid to be rejected, so you don't even attempt relationships, and so it can show up in different ways. Then the attachment styles on the side, you can see secure attachment, quick, sensitive, consistent mother or caregiver. The child is secure, explores, and is happy and believes and trusts that his needs will be met. Avoidant attachment, the mother is distant or disengaged, apologies for that, and the child is not very explorative or emotionally distant, and subconsciously the child believes that his needs probably won't be met. And then in terms of ambivalent attachment, the mother is inconsistent, sometimes sensitive and sometimes neglectful. The child is anxious, insecure, angry, and can't rely on his needs being met by the caregiver or the mother. Then lastly, disorganized attachment. The mother there's extreme fight and is quite extreme, frightened, and is frightening responses and quite passive, and the child is depressed, passive, angry, non-responsive, and severely confused with no strategy to have his needs met. So you can see that these relationships with the primary caregiver are exceptionally important, and they do affect the way the child then responds to the world, and also what type of adult they will be. So abusive relationships will definitely have a deep impact on that child in your classroom. So you see a child who is passive, angry, fighting, but you may not know that they may have had a caregiver who was extreme, that someone that made them very scared, that wasn't consistently there and did not provide for their needs, and therefore they become angry, they are depressed, they are passive, and they play this out in different ways. We will continue in the next video.